Okay, so we're talking about text behaviors, and we're going to go a little deeper. Before we do, I've put a new gradient background here. It's the same as before, just different colors, but I want to animate this gradient to make it a little bit more interesting. A great way to animate a gradient is with a specific filter. So with the gradient selected, I'm going to go to the library, I'm going to go to Filters, and I'm going to go to Distortion. And down near the bottom here, in fact, filters are worth looking at in list view because looking at them in icon view really doesn't tell you any additional information about them. Putting list view lets you scroll them a little easier. There's one called Underwater, which is not intuitive. That would be useful for this kind of thing, but let's drag it onto the gradient. And there's only one thing we need to do. Notice that it creates kind of some border issues. In fact, if we play it with this kind of strange wavy thing, but if we go to the inspector for this filter, there's an option for repeat edges. So I'll turn that on. And then right away, without doing anything else, we have kind of a nice, soft, animated background, very subtle. And there's a lot of different options in this filter you can adjust in terms of the size and the speed to change it. But I'm just going to leave it at the default because it's a quick, easy way to make a soft, nice background. Okay, so let's go back to the library, back to behaviors. And we were looking at these text animation behaviors, and we talked a little bit about text tracking and type on. I'm going to come back to these other two in a minute, and you'll see why. But right now I'm going to go to text sequence. This group of behaviors includes a huge number of preset text animations. And let's take a quick look at them. I'm going to go into this one called Text Basic. And here I'm going to go to List View just to be able to see more of everything at once. I'm going to pop open Text Basic. So in order to see what these do, if you select any one of them, you'll get a preview animation of exactly what that behavior does up in the little preview window at the top of the library pane here. Or you can simply drag one onto your text. Every one of these generally has a much shorter duration because these are designed to animate text onto or off the screen. So Arrange In, for example, will animate the text onto the screen in a very specific way. If I were to add Arrange Out, notice by default Arrange Out gets added to the beginning, and if we play now, it tries to do both at the same time, which isn't quite what we want. So what we want to do is drag Arrange Out later in time. Let's also put the playhead at the end and hit Option Command O to set a play range out point. And now when we play, the text will animate on and then animate back off again. So pretty easy to kind of throw these on. I'm going to delete both of these. I'll shift select both of them, hit the delete key. And I'm not going to go through all these. You can very easily see the preview and apply them yourself. The key thing about these is you can manipulate them in very dramatic ways. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. I will show you first one issue that can come up. I'm going to take this one called Blur In, and I'm going to put it onto this text layer and play it. And the text blurs on, but you may notice, let's go back earlier, the text looks a little bit yellow when it's blurring on. In fact, if I turn off the background, it might be a little more obvious that there's some yellow in that text when it's blurring on, and it can be a little bit unattractive. So what's going on there? If we go to the inspector, and then we go to the text inspector, to the style pane, remember style has those four attributes of the face, the outline, the glow, and the drop shadow. What's happening here is even though there's no glow enabled, this particular behavior is using a glow in the text animation. And the glow by default is yellow. And that's why we're seeing a little bit of yellow in here. It's not huge, but it can definitely show up in different behaviors. So this little tip applies to any behavior where you see a color you don't like. So what we're going to do to get rid of that is simply change this color here to white. In fact, if I roll through the colors, you can see the colors changing in the canvas there. And I'll just go to white, and it gets rid of that little yellow glow there. So that's just a tip, something that might trip you up when you're using some of these sequence text behaviors. Let's go back to the library. If I close this, there's a bunch of other ones. There's some continuous ones that do ongoing animation. So, for example, if I take shock, for example, and drop it on, this one will apply it to the entire length of text. These continuous behaviors are meant to animate text in a continuous way, not just to animate the text on or off, but to continue the animation. So in this case, it animates on, and then we have this kind of shaky text behavior. And you can see this particular sequence text behavior actually includes a couple of different ones when it's being used. Let's delete that. The other categories do some similar things. The energetic ones, you can see animate on and off. And once again, you can see a little preview animation there. Then we have some glow, some highlights, and some very subtle soft effects, like ephemeral in. Let's take a look at that. Text kind of glows and blurs as it comes on. Now, personally for me, when I use these sequence text behaviors, I will stick to the basic ones. Most of the time I'll use something like blur in or out or fade characters, center in or out. In fact, this one I like quite a bit. Let's get rid of this one and look at fade characters, center in. Okay, I'll generally prefer something that's simple and clean. You can change the duration of any of these simply by dragging them in the mini timeline to make them longer or shorter, to change how long the animation takes to unfold. Now, what I want to do is go to the inspector and go to the behaviors tab and take a look at this behavior. It's got a section called format and it's got a section called controls. This particular behavior is built exactly the way all of these preset behaviors are built. They're all built with a single behavior. So I just want you to keep in mind this idea that there's a format section and a control section. And we've seen some of this before. So what I'm going to do is delete this, go back to the library, and go back to the text animation category. In this category, we have the sequence text behavior. Notice that it almost has the same name as this category called text sequence. They're just kind of reversed. But the sequence text behavior is what was used to create all of these text sequence behaviors. So what we're going to do in the next lesson is dive into how to use the sequence text behavior, because once you understand how to build your own sequence text behaviors, you'll have a good sense of how to modify any of the existing presets.